Okay, so hello, I'm Danny Lamb. I'm here to talk to you about Islandora and Fedora 6. Yes, actually, I should save the introduction for this slide. So this fine-looking gentleman here is me. I'm the tech lead for the Islandora Foundation, which means I do basically all kinds of things. I wear many different hats, although I'm not wearing a hat right now, but part programmer, part sysadmin, part DevOps guy, part, mediator for conflict resolution, like you name it. Kind of do it all. It's a great job, keeps me on my toes. And I started out as an actuary and then worked in video games. And so I've been in, systems that try to take your money or keep you distracted. And so it's very nice that I feel like I'm doing something that actually helps the greater good here. So anyway, enough about me. So what is Islandora? I'm sure folks here have probably already heard about Islandora a bit, but sometimes we have these kind of existential questions that pop up in the community from time to time, and it's actually very understandable because Islandora actually does a lot and it's a big thing. So at face value, you could say that it is a Drupal front end for Fedora. I think maybe that was a better description back in the Fedora 3 days, but now that we're in Fedora, 4, 5, 6, its role has changed a bit. And so really what I'd say is that we use Fedora to add digital preservation features to Drupal. That's really kind of the best way I think I can explain it. However, being like a full-blown digital repository solution, you use all kinds of other technologies as well. So, we have integrations for Solar or for Cantaloupe for IIIF, and we make derivatives, so we use ImageMagick, and that last one there is FFmpeg for audio video processing. So we work with like a whole ton of stuff. So Islandora is all of those things as well. And then at some point in time, you actually have to deploy and run this thing. So Islandora is also essentially this series of Docker images that we build and we push to Docker Hub. And these are available for everyone to use. We have some example orchestrations using Docker Compose that are available that I've got a link to at the end of the slides here. And the Islandora Foundation doesn't steward any of the code for it, but I do know that there's a Kubernetes deployment in the works from a couple of different institutions. So we're definitely current or relevant, I guess, on the DevOps front. So Islandora is like all of those things, but then like even better, and maybe the best part of all of it is, in addition to all this great free software, Islandora is also like this really good community. We've got 300 something installs all over the world. We're on every continent except for Antarctica. I know there's a research station there, so hopefully we can land that one soon. But if you need, help or you have questions, we have a very active mailing list and Slack channel and everything else, and people are generally very friendly and love to help out. So that's really a big bonus for us. Community is one of our biggest strengths. So, all right, I've already burned 3 minutes here just rambling. So let's go. How does Islandora use Fedora? So we use Fedora in essentially 3 ways. So one of them is we use this system called Fly System. It is like an abstraction layer for files within Drupal. So essentially, Drupal just thinks Fedora is a file system. It could be a disk, it could be an Amazon S3 bucket, it could be kind of anything. And in this case, it could also be a Fedora. So we integrate with it that way. You go fill out a form and you go, upload some stuff. It goes right through Drupal and straight into Fedora. We also integrate with Fedora using Apache Camel. So essentially, as you're updating things or changing things, you're changing your metadata in the background, stuff is getting pumped out onto a queue, and Apache Camel is actually reading it and then posting the updates to Fedora. We also use a third technology called RipWrap. This is my boss made this, Mark Jordan, and it is essentially a microservice that's used for fixity checking. It is a premise compliant fixity checking service. And so we use that to add some digital preservation kind of sensibilities to what we're doing. So now I can talk about integrating with Fedora 6. So integrating with Fedora 6 was actually a pretty pleasant experience. So we do everything in Docker now with Docker containers. And so in an earlier presentation, someone mentioned that when they upgraded to a newer Fedora, it made them have to change their Java. And so we experienced that as well. If we initially just tried kind of running Fedora 6, and we realized it was going to make us bump up our Java versions for everything, which meant we had to go update our Camel tooling, which is very unfortunately running in OSGI right now. And so that is like, it's not impossible, but it is nightmarish to do. And so because we have everything so very well architectured and isolated and done in Docker, it actually turned out to be easier to just make a completely separate other container that was Fedora 6 and don't touch anything else. So we did not actually like update Java for the entire stack. We're still running on Java 8 for some things, but we just have these two containers that you can choose from using your orchestration tool. And both of them have all of the associated, like, you know, tooling that goes with Fedora. So there's the import export tool and there's the migration utilities, and everything is packaged up on the box. And then we use GNU make, just kind of as a wrapper around some Docker Compose commands. And so we've got stuff built in to just import and export all your stuff. And so integrating with Fedora 6 actually became pretty straightforward. We just made this other container, and then when we run the import and the export commands, you know, basically just on the import command, it checks to see if it's Fedora 6 or not. And if it is, it runs the migration util on the exported dump, and then it inserts it essentially as like the data directory for your Fedora 6, and away you go. So we have some built-in tools for folks if they're already on Fedora 5. We have everything to get you into Fedora 6 very easily. We do not, unfortunately, have all the steps to get you from a 4 like that were detailed out before. So when we shipped Islandora, we were kind of late to the game. So we shipped initially with just Fedora 5. But that's how we integrated with it. We just made that other container, and we make sure you have the import export tools, and things have gone very smoothly. In fact, when you spin up an Islandora instance, you get essentially demo sample content, and that content was exported from a Fedora 5. And if you spin it up with Fedora 6, it does that full process and shoves all that data in. And so that's actually what you're looking at. So all that demo content was essentially a little mini migration from 5 to 6. Oh, I've got an extra animation there I wasn't aware of. So there's a little bonus for you. You get a nice animation. All right. So I got about 3 minutes left here, maybe 2 actually. So we can talk about what broke when going from 5 to 6. And so some things did break, right? It wasn't just like this perfect flawless transition, but it was very, very, very minor. So what broke was essentially e-tags, and it wasn't e-tags, it was what we expected from them was wrong. So an e-tag is essentially a hash that represents the entire representation of a resource on the web. So you use it when you want to go make an update, you pull a copy, and then you get this e-tag that basically identifies it at that point in time. And then you go make your changes. And when you go to insert your changes, you provide that e-tag and you're like, hey, has this changed? Because if it has changed, you know, like abort. And so essentially that e-tag has to be a byte for byte representation of something. And so between Fedora 5 and Fedora 6, we noticed some things were changing in just that interpretation of it. And so like in Fedora 6, an e-tag even contains the headers of the response and everything that comes back. And because of the way we use the different prefer headers when retrieving and then inserting back into, we just found ourselves backed into like a weird corner. And so the solution was very straightforward, though. We just went back to the API, and there's a very similar feature called a state token that is provided. And so this sort of like checks to make sure all the triples are the same and nothing else, and it's independent of representation. So it doesn't matter if it's n triples or if it's JSON LD that you're looking at, you're always going to get the same thing. So really, we just switched over to using the state tokens instead of the e-tag. And that was it. It was like maybe a 3 or 4 line change in code, and that was all it took for Islandora to really adopt Fedora 6. So yeah, that was it. It was pretty minor. So I guess I'm like running out of time here. I'm already at like the 10-minute mark. So I'll just say that was it for us. If you want to try out Islandora and Fedora 6, you can right now. There's that technology that I mentioned with all the Docker containers. We call it Isle, and here's a link to it. We just sliced the release of it yesterday. And so if you go and spin it up and follow the instructions, you will have yourself a brand new Fedora 6. All right, I'll stop there. I'm 23 seconds over.